Sonic X Comic Issue 10. We start out with some text blurb saying that because the barrier between the two worlds has become increasingly unstable, the Chaotix have shown up on Earth. And not just them, but even Vanilla too, which was surprising to me. But I guess it shouldn't have been. It's a good thing they don't just drop that plot thread where Cream misses her mother, because she gets to see her again. But that was so easy. Amy says that there's no hope for the Chaotix on this world. Well, that was rude. Cream and Vanilla's dialogue about being reunited is so stilted, which is disappointing for such a victory for Cream. Well, she didn't earn it, so it's not a victory. Espio acts charming to Vanilla and kisses her hand. And Amy wishes Sonic would talk to her like that. Sorry, but Sega won't allow it. Then out of nowhere, the Chaotix get warped back home because they went to their office and an earthquake happened. Huh? Amy's naturally frustrated. You mean we could have gone home if we'd followed them into their office? That's not fair! I guess that's karma to them for disrespecting the Chaotix. Tails is excited and says they can take some readings and see if they can duplicate the frequency so they can go back home. Nobody points out to Amy that they need to stay on Earth anyways if they want to protect it from Eggman, since that's what they do. Immaturity is one of her primary personality traits, so it makes sense. Meanwhile, Topaz is lectured about how Eggman never would have gone to Ark if she had prevented him from getting to the space shuttle. Well, it's not like she can shoot lasers out of her eyes. What was she expected to do? She's a human. He says the only reason Topaz wasn't court-martialed for disobeying his order to come home was because the President of France himself called to commend her for saving dozens of lives, which he doesn't seem to care about at all. But again, he's a villain who makes sense with this motive, which is more than I could say for Eggman. He accuses Rouge of working with Eggman to conquer Earth because she's from the same planet as Eggman. Well, for one, she's a jewel thief, she's evil anyways, so it does actually make sense. In fact, it was more subversive that she was against Eggman in SA2. And two, he doesn't know her personally, and that's the only way you know for sure that she's not that evil. The only reason Westwood's getting away with this is because he's her boss, because for him to say that she's with Eggman just because they're from the same planet is completely ridiculous and nonsensical. He could have easily had better justifications than that. And I guess the only reason Topaz doesn't tell him that he's being illogical by assuming this and defending Rouge is because she doesn't want to get in trouble with him. He tells her that if she disobeys any more orders, she and Rouge will be put in prison. That's a little extreme, isn't it? Topaz finds out that Rouge is missing, and out of complete nowhere, it turns out that Sonic's been transported to Green Hill Zone. Out of complete nowhere. And he doesn't recognize the place somehow, despite looking familiar to him. Oh god, I'm getting Death Egg Madness flashbacks. But it's not ruined by Flynn, so maybe it'll be good. Maybe it'll have a good explanation. And hey, the fact that we were already told that the barriers between zones were weakened does do a good job explaining this right from the start. They were literally sucked into another dimension, rather than it being because of bullshit, like Narchi. But it's still worthless Sonic 1 nostalgia. Like, this came out of complete nowhere. Eggman brings his egg carrier to the South Pole to hide from the humans, and thank God they actually explain that Eggman is a human. I'm not supposed to believe he isn't. That contradicts the first issue, but it's a nice retcon for a change. One of his robots asks why Eggman keeps trying to conquer the world and failing if he's not foolish. Meta jokes like that don't work coming from robots who logically should be programmed to be loyal to him and think the world of him. That's not funny, that's stupid. You already have all of the heroes making fun of Eggman, and you're having his robots do it too? Isn't that overkill? It's the same problem that we have with Orbot, Cubot, and Ergo and Unleashed, and it's always the same bland joke over and over again. Hey guys, did you know that Eggman always fails to conquer the world? Isn't it hilarious that in these specific continuities, he's not allowed to be competent? Aren't we witty and self-aware for pointing out the way things are? No, Pontac McGrath, you're not. And then he took over the world in forces, so he doesn't always lose. And we still didn't get to see how his rule affected people's lives, so he might as well not have. And by that point, he had lost so much credibility that I refused to believe he could do it, and I hated it. I don't like that remark because I'm tired of that joke at this point. This comic was ahead of its time in a bad way with this. And worst of all, Eggman doesn't hear him say this and smack him, or even smack him and go to reprogram him. He smacked Ergo all the time in Unleashed, and that wasn't dismissed as too violent. A video game is written better than this. After that forced obnoxious joke, Eggman mentions that yes, Gerald Robotnik is his grandfather in this comic, so I have to wonder why he came from Mobius then. He learned that he was human and originated from Earth from Gerald's journals during the Shadow Saga in the anime. Okay, but shouldn't that have been a no-brainer? How many humans are on Mobius? There has to be some in this continuity as well, or else Eggman would have always assumed he was an alien. Because he's a human. He doesn't know why his grandfather sent him away from Earth long before he could have known he'd grown up to be evil. Translation: the writer was too lazy to fill in the plot hole and say that Gerald did know he was evil and wanted to seal him away from this planet. Which would have been the simple explanation. It was his grandfather's notes that told him Emerald was made by him and inspired his plan against Sonic. Seriously, why is it not explained why Eggman grew up on Mobius, and why was that not explained? That's such a gigantic plot hole. Why would they not properly build that in? That's so stupid. That's just unbelievable. Why is Sonic so amnesiac that he doesn't know what a shield is and is completely confused by it? Like, has he never encountered a shield before in this continuity? That's confusing. It'd be fine if it was explained that a part of Eggman's dimensional trap was erasing Sonic's memory, so he literally doesn't remember any of this, and so his reactions to it all make sense. I'd like if they explained that right from the start, since, you know, Game Sonic is always the default, for better or for worse, so you always just assume that he would be familiar with this game stuff right away. I do like that it's explained he's trapped in the boss arena by a force field. Thank you for explaining that properly. And it's especially great that we see him pushing against an invisible wall like he's in the game. Though in the game, you don't push on it. You just walk endlessly. But that wouldn't keep us invested because it'd be so stupid. Actually, that would be funny. See, you don't need to have Flynn write the story to have self-aware writing that comments on a Sonic game. This didn't need to be written by a Sonic fan. It's still brilliant and charming regardless. Although to be honest, I was bored to death until Sonic commented on his shield. I already know about Sonic 1. What makes them think that I want to see a story about it with nothing original at all? Sonic gets hit by the wrecking ball and his shield protects him. He wonders why Eggman's not saying anything and just laughs when normally he can't wait to taunt him. Maybe the reason this classic Eggman isn't talking in universe is because he's just a part of the simulation, and Eggman was too lazy to program him to have dialogue. Either that or this alternate dimension Eggman has laryngitis at the moment. Sonic still remembers the Eggman from Sonic X and how he's followed around by his useless robot sidekicks who are much less proactive than I thought they'd be. Scratch and Grounder at least went out and tried to do stuff every episode. All these robots have done is fail one mission and then make snarky remarks that they shouldn't be able to make. I like that after Sonic tried to make a witty taunt, he gets hit by the wrecking ball again. They should always do that in the games. Have Sonic get one-upped when he tries to be funny and fails. Or even when he is funny. But that would be also funny. I guess the explanation for the force field vanishing is that it was generated by Eggman's Eggmobile, and it malfunctioned when they damaged it. But this parody isn't going far enough because it doesn't bother to explain that. I had to fill in the blanks, and that was such an easy blank to fill. The force field was just there for the sake of a meta joke. It wasn't explained when it made perfect sense. Can I just cut to the part where it's actually original again? Is that okay? Because we've all played Sonic 1. And this is making Flynn's story look better because at least it had more characters than just Sonic in it. It has Sally, letting Sonic show a Casanova side, and letting her show, like, you need to cut off Robotnik's infrastructure, go figure, if you want to defeat him. Showing off, like, yeah, the games have that missing. And more importantly, it had Rotor, who reprogrammed a Badnik. Just when I was complaining about only Sonic being here, we see Amy tied up, and she can't feel her hammer anymore. Even though Amy had her hammer in the classic era too, you know. It was in Sonic the Fighters. And they get threatened by Eggman in the Marble Zone boss fight. Amy kicks his Eggmobile, awesomely defeating him in a clever way. But she falls into the lava with rings protecting her from a grisly fate. So the minute she does something awesome, she gets humiliated. Then Chuck goes to Angel Island. Anyways, Amy does a spin dash, making me wish she could always do that. And also, Sonic couldn't spin dash in Sonic 1, so that's a failure. I guess the reason the rings now affect Amy properly by giving her invincibility is because they're in the other dimension. But that's how rings should always work. And then they meet Knuckles in Spring Out Zone. Wasn't this a Sonic 1 adaptation? There's nothing to say. It's not going far enough with parodying and deconstructing Sonic 1, which you have to do. All Joe Edkin did was explain that it's a force field keeping them in the boss fights, and there's still no reason why the force field vanishes. Other than that, it was such a weak parody that didn't even qualify. It has to be a parody to justify itself, or a deconstruction, better yet. Just Sonic 1 being retold with boring dialogue from the characters. So it's worthless, basically. Because literally any fan can make a fanfiction about this. Any fan could play Sonic 1 and imagine Sonic having this exact dialogue. Just take the dialogue in your head when you're playing the game, put it in there. That's lazy because literally anyone could have thought of the story. It makes the Death Egg Madness look good, because at least there, we had Rotor doing cool stuff, even if they really should have had the force field thing, because that was brilliant. I hope this random Sonic 1 ripoff was just forced on the writer by executive meddling, because it comes out of nowhere. Literally, it comes out of complete nowhere. I completely forgot that the plot was gonna take this direction when I started reading this for the script. I loved that it wasn't just Sonic here, and Amy got to kick the Eggmobile to defeat it. But how the hell did Eggman send them to this place? The characters think it's familiar, so it's Mobius, but they don't immediately recognize it, so it's not Mobius? What the fuck? Did he mess with their memories? No, they clearly remember Eggman. How did Eggman make a trap like this? Are they just in another parallel dimension, that's it? Which would be keeping things simple? It seems just as arbitrary as when Flynn had Eggman do this. I guess with the foreshadowing that the barriers between worlds have weakened and that's why the Chaotix show up, they really did go to Mobius. Then how does Eggman have complete control over reality, changing the way rings work to how it's supposed to be? Eggman didn't get a hold of the Master Emerald, did he? How's he able to do this? Hopefully I'll learn in the next issue or so commenting tell me the answer would be a total waste of time, of course, but my point is that if I'm asking all these questions, just like in the Death Egg Madness, that's a massive problem with conveyance. That's the story's fault for waiting too long to fill in a very big plot hole, if it ever will. He probably just got really overpowered all of a sudden with an invention of his, and then he never does this again. If he has full control over any particular reality, why didn't he make the levels impossible for the heroes to beat? Because he's a complete idiot, that's why. To the point of breaking suspension disbelief. The story just baffles me. It's painfully obvious that it only exists because of meta logic, because this comes out of nowhere. I mean, okay, in universe it might make sense that Eggman would make the heroes get trapped in a video game simulation world, because he might think that's fun. He's like the childish villain. But if he did that, it wouldn't look like Sonic 1. It looked really menacing and the heroes wouldn't be able to beat the levels or the boss fights. If Eggman made a Sonic game, it'd just be a terrible ROM hack that's horribly unfair to Sonic. Like a Kaizo game. Because he's a cruel, sadistic villain who naturally doesn't want Sonic to beat it. It only looks like Sonic 1 for the sake of nostalgia. That's all. That's not keeping me invested when it reminds me of another continuity that isn't canon to this one. That's distracting. And that's not worthwhile because they're not doing anything original other than having other characters here who don't do anything special in the force field thing. It's lazy and uninspired. It was just rushed out. And the one force field thing is supposed to be the big thing that wows you, and that's all it's got. On the bright side, at least we're not seeing boring realistic humans as much, but they'll only be there temporarily. It does make sense that in-universe the heroes will be taking the Badniks seriously because they're threatening to kill them. And I guess if they were cocky, making fun of them for their weakness the whole time, it'd get really annoying. Because I'm sick of self-aware meta-humor. But I still felt annoyed that the heroes were taking the weakest enemies in Sonic history so seriously. When they die in one hit, it's just a waste of comic space. Fighting Badniks is not enough material to have a lot of comic space wasted on it. But they have to pass by Badniks to progress, so they can't skip past all of them. But in the games, you keep going, and you jump into the Badniks, and then you keep going. There's no dwelling on it. It really drives home that there's almost no real plot in Sonic 1, because that's all the story is. Once the heroes get trapped in Sonic 1, they run past Badniks and beat Eggman. The end. Also, Chris is here. Like, that's not a story. This is a comic book, not a video game.